So you're very welcome to join me for the first episode of What Moves Humans, a podcast that is all about human beings and what makes us tick physically, mentally, and on nutritional aspects. I want to try and over the next however many episodes there are, into really demonstrate how all of these things overlap, they all affect one another. Um, to help you understand over sort of maybe the cursory knowledge generally people have, that it's not, beyond far, just beyond like aesthetics and things like this, how we work. And I think, really understanding like how we tick on all these different levels will help you make potentially different decisions than maybe some of the ones that you're doing now, and that there are certain fundamentals of being a human that feed into just the human condition. There are fundamentals of how we're built. We're all different, of course. The basic blueprint for every human is the same, and the basic systems are all the same. Originally we all came from the same spot, and there's a lot of those sort of original systems that are very much ingrained in human beings. So hopefully you'll find this sort of podcast informative. Um, like I said, we're going to cover everything through nutrition, physical health, mental health, um, maybe remove some of the stigmas about some of these things, particularly say mental health, but hopefully these things will help you understand yourself a little bit better. And then potentially this will sort of help fill in some of the gaps on why we do things the way we do stuff. I want to start with sort of an overview of, like, first of all, modern man and where we are today in relation to sort of our evolutionary development. And, I think a really big sort of part of the puzzle is for many of the issues that we're facing today, and they're new issues, because the world has developed at a far, far faster rate than we have evolved. So, for many of the things that we do, it's almost like looking at we're a little bit analog in a digital world. Even though the quality of life has improved for us overall, there are certain things that are fundamental to humans that actually don't fit in so well with this unless we're aware of them and that we can sort of do stuff about them. So modern man in our current form is sort of between 150,000 years old, maybe as old as 200,000 years old. And sort of like Cro-Magnus is the first, like the Homo sapien, if you will, and they lived around the same times as the kind of the ending of the Neanderthals. Our brain size has not grown since that time. So, like roughly around 100,000 years old, our brain sizes remain the same. There's certain parts of us, the fundamentals and the problems that those people face were very different from the ones that we face now. What our bodies were designed for, it's very different to the demands that we place on ourselves today. If we kind of look at, like, in terms of like the evolution versus technology, I mean, one metric for measuring technology is the amount of transistors in per microprocessor. So in 1975, you're looking at about 10,000 transistors per microprocessor. 2017, 10 billion. So, we're all kind of aware of how fast things have changed. I'm sure if you're my age, you remember a time before smartphones. You remember a time even before mobile phones when you arranged to meet someone, you had to be there on time. Otherwise, it was it would mess things up. So even since those times, we're well aware of how fast things have changed for us. Anyone saw the Elon Musk when he was on Joe Rogan and he spoke, they were speaking about AI and things like this. He's talking about neural nets and his big worry of AI, and the only way for humans to sort of overcome this was to become more cyborg-like, which, and speaking about like how we are the only block in the sort of data flow now because we can't take in as much bandwidth. Now that has to be considered if we have all this sort of almost overpowering amount of information sort of flying around, and like there's so much for us to take in, and never before have we been able to access information at the rate we're able to now. It's just that all you do is you pick up your phone, you can find out anything instantly, and that causes its own problems. The people sort of are aware that how social media works. Lots of people aren't. How it fosters a lot of sort of outrage culture, shaming, all this sort of stuff. But there's people behind, these companies. They really understand human psychology and how we work. So they're trying to understand how these things how these things engage us more, so they can sell us more stuff. That's essentially it. But there's a deep understanding of how we work. One of the first people successful advertisers, I think, was back in the 1930s or 20s, was actually Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he was working out how to sell cigarettes to women. But he understood, obviously, I guess he was familiar with his uncle's work, but understanding the human psychology and what would make it better to sell stuff to them. I think it is important to know that there's certain things within us that can help us understand ourselves better so that we can recognize certain things. If we feel it's necessary for us, we can make the changes that we want to make. And many of us go and sit in a chair for 8 hours at work and then go home and sit on the couch. We are definitely not designed to do that, and there's many of our systems across the spectrum, physiologically, mentally, and nutritionally, that are tied in with physical movement. So this new thing of like being sedentary is causing all kinds of problems, which I'm sure you're aware of. The nutrition side of things, how people are eating, we're all very aware. I'm here in Ireland, and I used to live in the UK. I think the UK and Ireland are the sort of Europe's have the highest levels of obesity in Ireland. Oh, in Europe, I beg your pardon. So these are ongoing problems, and actually, in terms of first, we're now in a period. It's the first time in history, in human history, definitely recorded, that more people die from overeating than they do from famine. And I think that's a pretty incredible thing. So, and I'm just talking about recorded history, but, as far as back to hunter gatherers and things like that, we were designed to sort of find food. And now, as we sort of haven't updated our software too much, especially our most sort of like fundamental softwares, there's certain things that are sort of ingrained in us that work against us in terms of sort of, I think they can kind of foster our worst habits, if you will. So understanding how we work and maybe help shape some of the things that you do, so that you can, again, it's about you gather information. The more information you have, then the more informed your decisions can kind of be. So this is obviously a brief overview of how we developed and how we sort of, in relation to sort of how quick the world has developed, where we stand beside one another, how we work. So what moves humans? So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm going to be trying to release them about once a week. So hopefully, you find it informative and enjoyable. Thanks for listening, and the next episode will be about instincts, which I think is potentially one of the biggest pieces of the puzzles to understanding why we do the things that we do.